All right, so I'm JB Long from Summit Sphere. We are the developers and creators of ANTONBLAST, which is like a pseudo sequel narratively to our old arcade game Anton Ball Deluxe. Nobody's heard of that, and that's fine. A lot of people have heard of this though, so we're very thrilled about that. I mean, I am the head of production at Summit Sphere on this and some other things maybe to come later down the line. So on this, I do level design, game design. You haven't seen any of it yet, but the boss design, combat design. I'm also the producer, so like...
A lot of hats.
Yeah, a lot of hats.
So where did the idea for this game come from?
All right, so the idea for this game was we made Anton Ball Deluxe, and in that game we had built it as 3 Anton games, like just to kind of take the piss on the industry a little bit, just to be like, oh, it's a collection. It's a remake of some like game.
Remaster.
Yeah, it actually is a remake of a Game Jam game that our director did a while ago on his own. So what we did was like, oh, we're remaking that. It's the classic Anton Ball remade, and we're like taking it super seriously. And then it kind of like, we got a little bit of budget for it from a publisher that we worked with initially that kind of like helped us get a little more off the ground. And then we once we got the money flowing and we were kind of like working on it more full time, and to be clear, it was not a lot of money, so we were still kind of side projecting this. We started kind of taking the piss again, so it became goofy and then like we kind of lost the plot. And somewhere along the way, the third game we were going to do in there, which was Anton Land, we were like, this is not going to happen. So we split it off into its own thing, and it eventually became this. Initially, this was scoped way down. We started on Kickstarter. We were asking for like 70 grand, right? Which is not
a lot for a game dev.
No, it's not. So on Kickstarter, we got like 190% of that. We like blew up pretty big. The way that we did that is that we did the same kind of shtick, but did it earnestly, where we're just like 2 days before, we were like, hey, game 2, here we come. We had a little tiny fan base from Anton Ball, 8,000 followers on Twitter, like kind of middle tier. And then we dropped the Kickstarter. So we treated it as a big news drop, and then it kind of was one. It blew up. It got a lot of attention very quickly. We funded in 72 hours. And then over the remainder of the month and a half that we did the Kickstarter, we got up to 190%. From there, we started working on it. We were going to ship this year, actually right now is when we would have initially shipped. But it was much smaller. We ran into some friends that became partners, and they basically brought us up to a figure I cannot disclose that is significantly more than 190% of what we were asking before. So we have a lot more time, a lot more resources. We're actually going to be talking about that soon, so this is an actual very apt question to ask.
So this is a platforming game. Like what kind of games did your team draw inspiration to when you were designing it?
So obviously Wario Land, because that was kind of the initial joke. The arcade game was like Mario Brothers, like the original one, like the in the sewer.
The arcade one where you jump, yeah.
Yeah, and then the fuller, like other mode was going to be like Wario Land. So this has got Wario Land inspiration, especially Virtual Boy Wario Land, the weird pseudo 3D one.
Oh, my eyes still hurt.
Yeah, we have rooms hidden in the game that homage that with a filter. It still hurts. So beyond Wario, we've kind of diverged from that quite a bit as we found the gameplay's own identity. Really, the DNA from Wario is just kind of the run-back mechanic at this point. Crash Bandicoot, a lot of Crash Bandicoot, down to like crate puzzles. We have a lot of that kind of meticulous platforming of Crash 1, 2, and 3, but kind of rewarped to work with this speedy mechanics. Not that the game is a speed game, it can be, but we don't enforce it on you.
Reminds me a lot of the platformers of the Super Nintendo and Genesis age, like Tiny Toons, Looney Tunes, those kind of games, if people remember those.
Yeah, so along those lines, somebody asked me earlier, like, what is the game's runtime intended to be? Like, we think a lot of like those kind of Genesis era, you can do it one sitting if you want, like 6-7 hour thing, where you can blow through it, or there's a lot to do on the side. Like, we're looking at Sonic a lot because we call it earned speed. You can go fast if you are good enough to go fast, and if you want to, but akin to Sonic, you can actually play those games slow and have a lot of fun. It's just not what it's known for, but it's there for you. And that's kind of where we got from Sonic to this.
So talk about like the gameplay loop. You have some like cool things like a card, like your lives are like hearts, angry hearts or turnips, and then you have like a slot machine mechanic and like a bar mechanic and lots of stuff going on. Talk about the mechanics in the game.
Yeah, so the heart cards are heartbeats. Anton's a real big fan of beats, and we're a really big fan of dumb, obvious jokes. So they're heartbeats. You notice they're on little cards. All of the UI is casino themed because the narrative is casino themed. So the game's mechanics are all based around this kind of quick platforming exploration, but all of their ties into the narrative and the look and the feel is all tied into like this casino theming. Anton is working for a guy named Brulo. Anton's actually on 2 simultaneous quests. Quest number 1 is he needs to clear his tab with Brulo, the casino owner. The way he's doing that is blowing up all of Brulo's properties for insurance fraud. The other quest is Satan wants to be the reddest being in existence, but Anton is, so Satan's kind of mad. So he sent his moles to steal Anton's beer, his liquor, his spirits. So you're going to hell to kick his ass. So you're doing 2 things at once. 2 birds, 1 stone. Brulo scratches your back, you scratch his back. And on the way, Anton might find his booze. And
what are some of the biggest challenges in making a platforming game in the modern era, or 2023?
Okay, so the largest thing is, to me, a lot of people are concerned with like everything I do has got to be innovative in some way, right?
Right, you got to stand out by some kind of gimmick.
So the way we handle that is we're worried less about creating new gimmicks and more finding ways to put traditional platformer stuff together in new configurations. Like, for instance, I was talking about that meticulous Crash-style platforming where it's very rhythmic. So we want that kind of stuff, but we've managed to mold it in with this speedrunning capability. People they get into that mentality where they play the second level especially, where they're like, oh, those platforms, the timing puzzles, you can't do it fast. You can. Speedrunners who are just doing nothing but mastering the movement have taken our 40-minute second level down to 6 minutes. So like what we love to do is take all of these things from all these games and find ways to fit them into Anton's world. And to us, that means more and matters more than trying to reinvent the wheel. Because when you're making a platforming game like this, the core of it has been figured out, right? So, and that's not a bad thing. The execution of stuff, in my mind, matters maybe more than what your intent was. So we aim to take these things and execute very well on them and not spend a lot of time worrying, was this new? Because it may not be sometimes, but the configurations we have them in are fun.
So your art design is awesome. What were some of your inspirations behind the art direction? Looney Tunes, your classic Warner Brothers cartoons?
Yeah, so a big one is Earthworm Jim for the animation style. Just the animation style, nothing else from anybody involved with that, to be clear. But so what they did at the time was they would hand draw on full cells, and they would pull down and then sprite over it to get that hand drawn fluid frame by frame feel. We do the same thing, we just start digitally. So all of our team, our animation pipeline, shout outs to Fally, June, and Dan. They basically do everything for the animation. They start high res, shrink down, pixel over, and they're a very efficient pipeline. One of our Kickstarter things was to have your own character in the game, and they're fully animated. They have an idle animation and a damage animation, unless you opted out, because we did allow people to opt out of getting hurt, especially if their characters like self-inserts. But they're fully animated, and we had 200 of them. So they're fully animated characters. They're not quite as fluid as some of our like in-game stuff, but they're fully animated, complete from the ground up characters, and that's how testament to how efficient our pipeline is. They were able to do all those, and it didn't detract from our ability to do the rest of the art. And then as far as art style, mixed media games like the Wario Game Boy games where they just threw shit together and didn't care how it looked, but like in a good way. You don't really see it too much in the levels we have here today, but like it gets very weird by the end. Like around the middle, you start rolling into these like boulders you can move around to reach places and break through walls, and they're just giant billiard balls, but they're like photorealistic. And then you have like the HUD elements are 3D rendered for no reason, just because that era was weird. And then you pointed out earlier when you were looking at the game, there's like that kind of Genesis era chunky pixel art where like the line weights vary and you have a lot of thick art, thick lines. I mean,
There's a game called Tasmania, and like that, it reminded me of that game.
yeah. So and basically that whole like Game Boy Advance again, but like more consistent games where you have like the weird 32-bit pixel art, where it's like super detailed but also kind of like flat looking at the same time. If you get what I'm talking about, you're an art guy. You were saying. But yeah, so we got, God, it's just a hodgepodge, right? And that's kind of what we were shooting for. And I think we landed on it,
So when does your game come out, and what platforms are you going to be releasing at launch?
All right, so I got to hit you with the classic, but we're not talking about release date yet.
TBD, okay.
TBD, it will be next year. Initially we're shooting for this year, but then like I said, more money happened, some more time happened. But we're very cautious to not let that become, because we're very, like I said, we have a very efficient pipeline. What we did with that extra time was revisit pre-production and feel out some of the gameplay a little more and make it more cohesive, flow better. We just did a big meta change with like our health system that everybody's beating the levels at this PAX, and this mix. PAX East, that was not the case. But
Don't go George Lucas on me. Don't go special edition Star Wars on your game.
No, here's the spoilers. I'm going to look down the lens for this because I know it creeps people out. We didn't change the levels. We didn't make it easier. We just made it suck less when you die. Right? You can still suck ass. It's just when you suck ass, it feels a little less shitty. But so Nintendo Switch and PC at launch for sure. Other things may happen. No commitments. I'll be very clear about that. No commitments on that.
Are you self-published, or do you have a publisher?
Published with partners for things and investment. So, but we are in control of our IP and all of that and everything like that.
In the meantime, where can people go to find more information about your game? Can they wishlist it, Steam, Discord?
Yes, you can absolutely wishlist it at ANTONBLAST.com, which goes right to our Steam page. SummitSphere.com, at SummitSphere on literally everything. Our social media guy's sitting back there. I should get mad at him. It would be really funny. He'll retweet this. But yeah, so at SummitSphere on everything. You can follow me and Tony Grayson, our director, at JumpButtonCB, JB Long, and at GraysonZ80.